And it says we are live on Facebook, live and Facebook. All right, everybody, give them the happy hands. All right, try to make this a positive thing going on. It's nothing but awful news recently, but we're going to try and make this work. Okay, everybody, today is Monday, 23 March 2020, and I've got Phil Mazur and Matthew Whitaker on. We're going to be doing the weekly and daily update for the coronavirus situation. Wanted to introduce Phil. So Phil, can you give us a few minutes about who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name is Phil Mazur. My company is the CFO Mission, and I serve as an outsourced CFO for property managers. So what that means is serve your financial leadership role. We do corporate accounting according to NARPM standards. We have custom reporting, and we do high-level oversight of your trust accounts. And in addition to that, I'm also a EOS implementer. So
full disclosure, everybody, Phil's been working with RentWorks now for about a year and a half. I've got a lot of experience working with him as a virtual CFO. He's also doing our EOS implementation at this point. And I wanted him to come on because I believe he can talk quite a bit about cash flow. And that's one of the biggest worries we have right now as property management company owners and or operators is the cash flow process. And so as we get into some of the latest news, you know, Phil is going to be able to interject some concepts from where that takes us in the company realm of cash flow. So some bad news I wanted to talk about at least today, right up front, is unfortunately RentWorks had to furlough 6 employees today. We're getting ahead of this. We feel that, you know, these are employees that were potentially, you know, not essential to the business. I mean, they're all essential, and I really hated to do this, but we got to get ahead of this. And so we made that decision today. As soon as it starts to V up and turn north, you know, this whole thing, that's when I can believe I can bring those staffers back. And, you know, it was a full-time photographer, and it was a front desk person, and it was a second maintenance coordinator. So, I mean, these are, you know, the business will still run, but I definitely want those people back as soon as I can so we can continue to grow. So that was the dirty laundry I want to get off my chest today, and I don't feel good about it. I've just been in a funk the whole day from it. That, and you start reading the Drudge Report, and it doesn't help your persona. So Matt, give us some headlines, please, that we can kick around.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being very transparent with that. I know this is a super hard time. We're trying to focus on business survival, and I admire you for making tough decisions to save RentWorks. First thing I would say is the SBA website crashed. So Alabama got allowed to have this SBA financing. We started reaching out to the SBA, and the website kept crashing today. So if you're experiencing that, others are experiencing that too.
Sorry to interrupt you there. We were experiencing the same thing. I had Amy, my main accounting coordinator, do this all day. She's basically checking the SBA website, trying to get in there to, you know, complete the application. She kept giving me updates that it's still crashing, it's crashing. So I just, you know, I didn't look at it once like you, maybe at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then you look at it at 3 and it still crashed. I mean, she looked at it all day and it was still out. So it doesn't surprise me, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me, and that's
there's a huge
part.
need. I think everybody's trying to get ahead of it. Another piece of unfortunate news. Yesterday, we thought the Senate was going to pass. Today, we thought the Senate was going to pass, but for the second day, they didn't pass any new legislation. There's supposedly $500 billion to help businesses like ours. And so it's just really disappointing. I don't want to get super political on here, but point is, the longer this goes on and the lack of clarity that they have about what the moves are, more people are going to, you know, make decisions to furlough and lay off people. Whereas if they had a plan that would help us keep people, and there was a lot of clarity around that, then obviously we would do that. So it's kind of super disappointing that they've gone another day and kind of in this gridlock.
Yeah, so I'll make a couple comments on that. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this at all, Phil. I mean, sometimes ignorance is bliss on this subject because it just doesn't help your blood pressure. But you know, it's not something that, you know, any of us can do anything about. But we do know that the Democrats wanted to put in a few more things, a few more spending things, and I'm sure that the Republicans did the same type of dirty politics stuff where they're seeing this crisis and they can start putting in their special interests. And when one of the other sides calls the other side on it, it just stalls things out. And so it's really partisan politics at this point. They voted across party lines, minus one Democrat voted on behalf of the Republicans. So it's like a sticky subject right now. I hope they can see past the pork as they call it in politics, and just try to get this thing passed. And I hope the SBA gets a working website sometime in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, the longer these things go, the lack of clarity we have, the more us small business people start to freak out, right? So let's move on to some tangible things that we can help some people with. Phil has obviously helped me. Phil and I worked together for two and a half, 3 years. Did an excellent job working with us, and then he's kind of gone on to be to the CFO Mission and do some really awesome things. And Phil, talk about some tangible ways that people can start to conserve cash and or even generate cash during this kind of time of crisis.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would like to address today that I think could help people. And one is to just from a general overall what the heck is going on type of thing. There's a lot of emotion that is being felt. You know, what you guys just described from a political standpoint, there's a lot of things going on that are uncertain, not just with the virus, but everything that comes with it in your business. So really what I'm telling people right now is to, as much as you can, focus on the facts, right? And, you know, we talk about the brutal facts as a Jim Collins thing. And, you know, Brad just described an example of confronting brutal facts. And I think that where that starts is with data. So from a financial cash flow aspect, if you don't know what your position is, that's your number one challenge, is to figure out where you actually stand right now. So that's what I would encourage people that don't know, and that they're really, really scared and unsure because they can't even make a decision. Try to figure out where you stand. So one of the dangers of that is using your checking account balance to kind of gauge the health of your business. And we see that a lot in small businesses. And the reason why that's scary is because throughout the course of a given month, your cash flow is going to go like this. I mean, a lot of times in property management, it starts off really high if you collect your fees at the beginning of the month, and you kind of just drain that as the month goes by. So this is a scary time because we're approaching the end of the month, and perhaps your checking accounts are dwindling, and you're looking at the beginning of April saying, what am I going to get? Literally, everybody's speculating on that right now. You know, there's polls on Facebook about how much collection we're going to get because we don't know. So that's very scary. So with that, I say, number one, figure out where you stand and then try to project it forward. And we really are working in a time period of like weeks here that you need to be looking forward. I mean, typically we're looking at 90 days as a reasonable period of time where you're really doing projections. I mean, you plan for a year and then you kind of break that down into 90-day periods. And as I'm doing EOS stuff, I was actually on a call with EOS implementers last week, and they were like, we're changing the game here. Like, everything is on the table. Your 90-day period, if you need to shrink it, shrink it. I mean, there's people who did strategic planning sessions last week that are redoing them because things have changed so much. So
Phil, talk about let's say I kind of have a general idea where I am, but I wanted to kind of put together a back of the napkin cash flow statement. I mean, something is better than nothing. How would somebody get started doing that?
Yeah. So my recommendation is to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, when I start off working with people, sometimes we literally just start with a spreadsheet and I say, look, let's start mapping things out. Where is your checking account right now? And what upcoming bills do you have? And start with the big stuff. So start with your next payroll cycle. You know, if you're 2 weeks out or a week out from your next payroll, you can literally just go into your bank statement and see how much you put out for payroll and start learning. I mean, if you don't have the systems in place or you don't understand your QuickBooks, for example, or your bookkeeper is just paying bills as they come in, look, we're not going to fix that situation right now. Go look at your checking account statement, because the good thing about accounting cycle is that a monthly accounting cycle is pretty typical. So from month to month, you can pick up what those big things are. You know, you pay every 2 weeks or every week or whatever. You know when your management fees come in on a certain day of the month. So look at your last month's checking account and kind of plug those numbers in, and then be conservative. Play around with the numbers. If you bring in $50,000 in management fees in the first week of the month, put in 40 and see what that means. And you know, keep your costs in there, right? and see what your balance does and project that out as long as you can. If you can go out 2 months, that would be great, because I think we will get clarity a little. I mean, it feels like the last 2 weeks has been like 2 months, but it really hasn't. So that's where I would start. Just keep it simple with a spreadsheet.
Talk about some tangible ways that somebody can actually, cut expenses. I mean, I remember some things that we went through where we were literally just going line by line and saying, do we need this? Do we need this? I mean, you and I had at least 2 of those sessions. Talk about kind of the best practices for eliminating expenses during a time like this.
Right. So the good thing about this situation is that it's forcing people to do things that they should have already been doing. Right. So companies that have already kind of gone through maybe they've gone through a crisis, or maybe they've gone through growth and they've succeeded, they've broken through ceilings and grown their company. They've had to go through this because there's always been growing pains. If you're trying to grow in this industry, you're putting out costs ahead of the revenue cycles. So you've done this before. But if you haven't, what can you do? So again, you got to kind of look at what your expenses are, and you got to this is the time to get into the details, right? Use your people for what they are there for from an accounting perspective. You're going through your credit card statement, you're going through your checking account statement, like I said, and you go down to the different layers as you need to. And what I mean by that is, if you've got payroll, for example, that's your biggest expense. More than likely, it's your biggest expense. That will be one where you go down into the details and you say, you're going to look at each person, but there's a process we used in EOS called keep or kill, and it's keep, kill, or combine is what it really is. But it's just a way of prioritizing things, right? So you're putting a dollar amount next to these things. But what it's going to allow you to do is really face these facts, put them in front of everybody, put them in front of your team, and just say, hey, do we need this or not? Right? Because this is not the time to say, yeah, but we use it every once in a while. Like, no, you don't need it, so cut it. And personal, like the personal comparison I would give this to, and this is probably relevant to a lot of people out there, is if you're the only person in your business, if you're a small property manager, it's just you and one other person, maybe like me, I'm a one-stop shop. I mean, I've got some help, but my business, I have to look at my personal expenses. I mean, honestly. So I think that's a real thing that I would recommend people. Look at your personal expenses and say, what am I doing at home? I'm spending more time at home because I have to, right? So there's opportunities there, but also from a leadership standpoint, you're going to expect some of your people are going to share in some of this misery. I mean, it just has to happen. You don't want to lay people off, but you need to prepare them for it. So I would say lead by example and tell your people, hey, this is what I'm going through at home. This is what I'm looking at home. Bring that attitude to your business, because the people have to be prepared for that as well. This is not the time to go out. I mean, I don't want to ding the economy right now, but this is not the time to make a significant purchase. I hate that, but I think we know we got to weather the short-term storm. And one of the things that they said in the EOS meeting was I don't know the exact quote, but it was Winston Churchill, and it was a wartime quote that basically said, you can't always focus on the long-term vision, because you could get killed in the short term.
You got to survive.
Yeah. I mean, we know what our vision is. If you have a vision and you have values and things like that, those principles should be guiding the decisions you're making today. But it's war room time when you're in the office.
So we at GK Houses are putting together what we're calling a COVID dashboard. And I'm not going to tell you what's on it yet, but let's say you were putting together, for this wartime, right? I mean, it's wartime. We need to make certain things on a daily basis are accounted for. So if you were helping somebody, what would you put on your COVID dashboard?
That's a good question. I think what I would like to see achieved from your dashboard would be leading indicators, because leading indicators are going to allow you to make decisions in as close to real time as you can. So the comparison would be, a lagging indicator is your financial statement, your income statement at the end of the month, or even your checking account balance when it's too late, right? When somebody walks in and says, you don't have any money or you bounce this check. That's not really helping you, figure out what you need to know. So you're looking at collection rates, obviously, but even collection rates can be a little bit lagging in this time. I mean, so some of these things may be stuff you haven't even tracked before. You might be looking at things like tenant communication emails that are coming in, because you guys have talked about some of these things. You're getting emails, you're getting people reaching out and saying, hey, I might not be able to pay rent, or owners that are, might not be able to pay their mortgage and things like that. Another thing that I think people should be looking at is their maintenance reserves. I think this is a very important thing. If you're doing work for people and you're carrying a reserve and you're letting the rent essentially pay you back, this is a very dangerous time for that, because you have a high risk of not collecting that rent, or maybe not collecting it in full. Maybe it's 30, 45 days out, and you're risking putting yourself in a negative trust account balance situation. So that's something I think property managers specifically should be very aware of, not to mention the whole fear of actually being able to collect that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's
totally.
a huge fear, because I will say this is a crisis, right? All the relationships you think you have with your people, throw them out the window. Throw all the feelings out the window. People are going to take care of themselves here. That IOU, I'll get you later. Be careful.
Yeah, in an awesome market where everybody's paying rent and all the money's flowing freely, everybody's very generous. But when there's fear and everybody's pulling back, you're right. I mean, it would be nothing for an owner to stick you with a $200 or $300 bill and tell you to pay it. Just some other things for the help of everybody else. We're looking, obviously, Phil said collections. What we thought is, hey, let's look at collections relative to last month, because, or really this month, because we started this month fairly normally, right? And everything was hunky-dory 3 weeks ago. And so we're going to compare it to March, and compare April to March. And then we're also going to compare year over year, April over April. And so we're going to try to watch the trend line to see, are people paying rent? Are they not paying rent? The other thing we're looking at, because we run a maintenance business, is work orders, and work orders over last month or last April. We derive a lot of our revenue from maintenance. And so we need to make sure that we're staying on top of work orders. The other thing we've instituted is we're requiring everybody, if they want us to do a rehab on their property, and we call it rehab, essentially what the turn is, we're requiring them to go ahead and put up 100% of the money. I mean, you're right, Phil, it is extraordinary times, and normally we'd make them put up half the money and just wait and pay the vendor. But I don't want to stick the vendor with the bill. I would feel obligated to pay that. So we're just going to, force them to go ahead and put all of that money into their trust accounts. Anything you would add, Brad, to the COVID-19 dashboard, if you had one?
Yeah, I mean, our numbers for RentWorks were less than 1% delinquency for last month in February. So we had roughly 1.2 million in rent roll coming in and out, actually a little more than that. We had less than 12,000 in delinquency. So, that's our baseline is 1% or less than. We don't know how high it's going to go in March. It's kind of a wait and see. And, it's a scary thing. So this is a question that I asked. I can't remember who I asked. I think I asked one of my colleagues, and there's no right answer. So you don't have to say what you're going to do or yes or no. But, we ask, should I be paying my office rent to my office? Are they going to get some sort of relief on their side? So I'm thinking like a tenant potentially. If a tenant's looking at it do they need to pay rent to us because there's going to be mortgage relief? And I was looking at it just a question. Do we need to pay our office rent, which is $11,000 for our 6,000 square foot office space? Do we need to pay that this month, or do we contact them and say, hey, can you work us a deal? Can you push it? And stuff like that. I mean, so we're going to kind of wait and see. I mean, the obvious answer we Phil and I came up with is yeah, let's go ahead and pay that, because I don't want to, I just don't want to open that bag of worms necessarily. But it is a thought. I mean, where in the expenses column can we start erasing necessary things to pay to ensure that we survive the next 30, 60, 90 or longer? I mean, we don't know how long this thing is going to happen. I mean, things are getting real now to where you're seeing shelter in place in certain areas, right? I mean, shelter in place is like, you're not going outside. I mean, go up, you stay home.
So I'll make a comment on that because this gets sticky, right? Because there's a lot more things that matter than just the actual money, because there's relationships that are going to continue on or not continue on 30, 60, 90 days, years from now. So there's an impact to everything that you do or don't do, positive or negative. So that's where I say start with the data, because if you're just without any backup making decisions based on feel, you're probably going to end up making a bad decision. That chances are that you're going to do that. But if you have the data and you have opportunities that you can maximize, or just to let's say something simple like your mortgage is due on the 1st, but it's not late until the 15th. Well, if your cash flow statement says that on the 7th or on the 1st you don't have enough, but on the 10th you will, well, by all means, that's a situation where you should use that, because that's given to you. Okay, interest-free loans. I mean, like this SBA stuff, I say go do it and do it now, just like you guys are doing, because it's a very good short-term gap. Even if you don't know you need it, it allows you to extend. Essentially, you're extending the play, right? Extending the drive. I mean, these are the kind of things we need to be doing. Now, personal opinion, I don't think just going and attacking people and going to every vendor and saying, hey, can you cut? I don't think that's going to serve you all in the long term, because we all know that everybody's hurting here, right? But to the same extent, you can't just go pay all your bills in the 1st and say, I'm good, because you might end up hurting somebody on your own team later down the road. So you can't make these decisions in a silo.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I actually had a optometrist ask me this question. She knew I was in real estate, and I told her, I mean, it's worth a phone call and asking the question, because if your landlord is getting relief on their end, or the owner of that building is getting relief on their end, it's very simple to just say, hey, I'm fine today. I want to keep renting. I want to be here long-term. I want to build a good relationship, but I'm scared what's going to happen over the next 90 days. What could you do for me? That's not a bad question to be asking, because then the landlord, it's not a threatening question either, because then the landlord may say, well, I'm not getting any break. I really need you to pay all your rent. Or they can say, hey, my mortgage company is allowing me only to pay interest this month or the next 90 days. Why don't you just pay half your rent? And then, everybody's kind of in the same boat. So I don't think asking the questions necessarily wrong, and seeing if they're, because they're not going to proactively reach out to you and say that. At least generally speaking, they're not going to proactively do it.
That's exactly right. So definitely ask the question when you're reviewing your expenses. An example of something that I did with somebody last week was reach out to a virtual assistant and say, hey, we just started a relationship. You have a minimum number of hours that you require. Would you be willing to waive your minimum for the next 3 months? Telling your employee that, maybe you have a part-time person saying they basically work as needed. Say, hey, look, I want to limit you to 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week, and I want to hold you accountable to that. And if you need to go over that, I want you to talk to me before you just start working on stuff, because especially a growth company as well, you're doing things that aren't, you might have all essential people, but they're probably not doing all essential activities to what's currently going on. So that's another way that you can kind of, trim costs without putting somebody on the street maybe.
Yeah, because this is a tough time. I mean, if you think about it, are the people that are communicating with our residents, if your collections goes up, our revenue is going down while our collections are going, while our communication and work is going up. So it is tough right now. I mean, we're talking about allocating, maybe even leasing people and or salespeople into tenant comm just for the next 90 days so that they can, so that we can kind of fill that void, and so that everybody's working on high return things during that time.
Yeah, Matt, you wanted to talk about some test case you were considering, 50 potential tenants in your market?
Yeah, so I am running of course, we're in now 8 different markets, but what we've decided to do is we really divide them into 6 markets, and we're gonna send this email to 10 different ones in 6 markets. And basically what we're gonna try to see is if we proactively get ahead of this, will it benefit everybody? In other words, if we reach out to the residents first, what happens? Because there's this fear of this blowback of us being kind of the evil, greedy landlords. And so we're saying, I've written this what I feel like is empathetic letter. I've even shot a video that I'm going to include in it. And we're going to kind of send it out to 10 people in each market. So it's very manageable, and see what the response is. One of the theories behind it is, if you think about it, if somebody proactively reaches out to me and tells me, oh, I got furloughed or I got laid off, then I'm in the position of either making them a liar or making them tell the truth. Well, if I proactively reach out to somebody, then I hope to head off the liar from even trying to lie, if that makes sense, because it puts us on the offensive and saying, hey, we're going to do our due diligence. And so part of it is, hey, we're going to go through this process. You're going to have to fill out this verification form, and then we're going to verify with your former employer, hey, are you laid off? Were you furloughed? So that we can do our diligence for our owner. And then we're going to work on a payment plan that makes sense for everybody involved. So us being proactive, hopefully we're getting out ahead of the people that would proactively reach out to us. And then all of a sudden we're on the defensive trying to call them a liar, if that makes sense.
Oh, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think with rent, flexibility in terms of partial payments is going to be a huge thing here, because you guys have discussed, even if there's government assistance given out, that's not going to put a dent in rent. And most likely people are looking at it and saying, oh, if I don't have to pay my rent, I can survive because I can make up all the other stuff because it's such a significant expense. So if you can even be getting half, during these next few months, anything is better than nothing. And I think flexibility is going to serve you well. Also from a customer satisfaction standpoint.
Yeah, our experience has been if people fall too far behind, they give up. And to Phil's point, if we can keep them close enough that they don't fall too far behind and give up, then that's going to be best for everybody. So taking partial payments is probably a wise idea, at least for some 60 or 90-day period, short-term period of time.
Excellent. Any parting comments, gentlemen?
I feel like today we've been very focused on surviving, and I just want the last message. I want everybody to also take time this week to figure out how you're going to thrive through this. This is going to create, not that everything's not bad and that we don't need to do what we got to do to survive, but I also think we need to be thinking about thriving. What types of opportunities is this going to create? There's going to be some great people out there to hire as you continue to grow your business. There's going to be potential businesses to buy. There's going to be maybe even other property managers that aren't as well prepared as you that might go out of business, and new clients are going to be needing services. So think of this as a short-term window. Try to think on the other side of what is it going to take for us to thrive coming out of this.
Appreciate that. Phil, thanks for coming on today. And gentlemen, this has been a good update. So I appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'll be back again tomorrow, hopefully with, more fun, good news. All right. You stay safe, everybody out there. Appreciate you joining in. All right.
Bye,
take
everybody.
care, gentlemen. Appreciate you coming on.
Everyone.
All right. Bye.